forsaking God, give us a king. And it came to pass, when Samuel was old, that he made his sons judges over Israel. Now the name of his firstborn was Joel, and the name of his second Abiah, and they were judges in Beersheba. And the sons walked not in his ways, but turned aside after lucre, and took bribes, and perverted judgment. Then all the elders of Israel gathered themselves together, and came to Samuel unto Ramah, and said unto him, Behold, thou art old, walk not in thy ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations. But the thing displeased Samuel when they said, Give us a king to judge us. And Samuel prayed unto the Lord. And the Lord said unto Samuel, Hearken unto the voice of the people in all that they say unto thee. For they have not rejected thee, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them. According to all the works which they have done since the day that I brought them out of Egypt, even unto this day, wherewith they have forsaken me, and served other gods, so do they also unto thee. Now therefore hearken unto their voice, howbeit yet protest solemnly unto them, and show them the manner of the king that shall reign over them. And Samuel told all the words of the Lord unto the people that asked of him a king. And he said, This will be the manner of the king that shall reign over you. You will take your sons and appoint them for himself, for his chariots, and to be his horsemen, and some shall run for his chariots. And he will appoint him captains over thousands, and captains over fifties, and will set them to fear his ground, and to reap his harvest, and to make his instruments of war, and the instruments of his chariots. He will take your daughters to be confectionaries, to be cooks, and to be bakers. He will take your fields and your vineyards, and your olive yards, even the best of them, give them to his servants. He will take a tenth of your seed and of your vineyard, and give to his officers, and to his servants. He will take your men servants and your maid servants, and your godliest young men and your asses, and put them to his servant. He will take a tenth of your sheep, and ye shall be his servants. Ye shall cry out in that day because of your king which he shall have chosen you, and the Lord shall not hear you that day. Nevertheless the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel, and they said, Nay, but we will have a king over us, that we may also be like all the nations, and that our king may judge us, and go out before us, and fight our battles. And Samuel heard all the words of the people, and he rehearsed them in the ears of the Lord. And the Lord said to Samuel, Hearken unto their voice, and make them a king. And Samuel said unto the men of Israel, Go ye every man unto his city. Hello and welcome everybody to a new video from Jörg, Joggler 66, Hour of the Truth. Today, on a wonderful, incredible, sunny Sabbath day, Saturday, the 20th of October 2018, we still have about today 50 degrees only, but in the week we had up to 70 degrees. To mid-October, this is just incredible. The summer just don't want to end, and I love it. Because to me, it can be summer all day long and all night long, all year long. I don't need the winter. Really, I don't. And when the sun is shining this wonderfully, it puts me in a wonderful mood, and this wonderful mood puts me up to my desktop computer, open Skype, have a call with Brother Bret, and we decided, of course, to do another reading of the wonderful book, The Great Exodus by James Edgar Wylie. The fourth reading today, which, again, I have to excuse myself, I did not have any time to prepare, not even a sentence before that, so I'm reading this book cold, yeah? How do they call it? They have a special expression for that. cold-blooded, or no, not cold-blooded, cold-heartedly,
Cold
or
turkey.
cold turkey. Thanks.
Yes.
That's it. Who is the guy that you hear in the back there? Well, that's Brother Bret. Hello. Welcome to the broadcast,
Thanks.
Brother Bret.
Thanks, Jörg. Yeah, great to be here. Ready and waiting to continue with the chapter, I believe, where we're in chapter 4, was it?
We were in chapter 4, yeah. And now we are going cold turkey on page 45 and continue the reading, because we were just reading how James Atkin Wylie very poetically described the Antichrist system, the empire that reigned in the Middle Ages. And now we are going to continue in the reading at this point here on page 45 in the book, at the head. And I'm going to continue right away. At the head of this vast empire that was the pages before poetically described by James Atkin Wylie, stood Philip II. If ever man did, Philip governed for an idea. That idea was the entire and absolute submission of the conscience of every human being to his will, or, which was the same thing, to the authority of the Church of Rome. Quote, "The Church alone is Lord of the conscience," unquote. Well, every Bible-believing Christian, of course, disagrees here and has to shout out, "No, that is not biblical doctrine. Our Creator, God, is the Lord of our conscience," and that is what Martin Luther stated when he was in Worms defending his writings. And he could not go against conscience and plain reason. The Church alone is the Lord of the conscience? No, God alone is the Church of the conscience, is the Lord of the conscience. And this is where you see, of course, that the Roman Catholic Church is the absolute adversary of Jesus Christ. Such, the author says, was the theorem, the truth of which Philip undertook to demonstrate. This theorem was with Philip the sum of all wisdom. Out of it, the Spanish king infallibly held must grow the order of the world, the prosperity of states, and the happiness here and hereafter for every individual. The magnificent Spanish monarchy became but the embodiment of this idea, and the whole administration of government the machinery for carrying it into effect. That this idea was true, and that it would conquer, Philip never for a moment even doubted. And indeed, why should it not, seeing it was backed by the armies, the fleets, the statesmanship, the policy, and the whole power of the Spanish monarchy? Well, the long centuries must try. Having based his splendid empire upon this idea and staked its progress upon its truth, Philip dies, and with kingly pomp is laid in the vaults of the Escurial. I'm going to change the picture here, and then we're going to continue reading. Leaving the Spanish king to sleep, his deep sleep, and the Spanish monarchy to work out its great experiment, big with momentous issues of good or of evil, we turn our steps into northern Europe. The mariner, sailing under the star of the pole, descries a little country in the North Sea, its naked mountains shrouded in clouds and its rocky strand beaten incessantly by ocean's angry surge. What a contrast to Spain, with its fruitful soil, its delicious climate, its stately cities, and its colossal shadow covering both Occident and Orient, is this insignificant, hardly known, and rarely visited country, one whose shores we now set foot on. Between the Scotland of the 16th century and the Spain of the 16th century, we find a contrast than which that age offered no greater, and never perhaps has a greater been offered by any age before or since. Of Scotland, the plough has as yet scarce tamed the soil. Bits of meadow and patches of corn land gleamed out amid the all but universal covering of brown moor and black wood. Here art had reared no stately cities. The sons of this land dwelt in hovels of mud or in tenements of wood. Commerce had not filled its harbors and its highways with traffic, or enriched its towns with the produce of other climes. Learning and science had not yet refined the manners and expanded the minds of the citizens. Law struggled to maintain a precarious footing amid the insubordination of lordly churchmen and the turbulence of factious barons. The burghers, we are not talking about the hamburgers, but the citizens. Yeah, that's an old word for citizens.
Really? Is that right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I very much prefer the word burghers in this case.
Mm-hmm.
Because the word city has a Roman Catholic meaning. You know, I looked that up one time. I don't remember it anymore. But city is always relied to a bishop's seat.
Oh, so, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And citizen is by that someone who is subject to the bishop.
Yes.
And that's why I very much appreciate the word burger. And by the way, we speak of that in German too. We call it Bürger. We write that B-U with 2 dots on it, R-G-A-R-S. So without the H, this is how we write burgers in German.
Sure. Yeah.
Just take away this H, burgers,
gotcha.
And put 2 dots on the U, and you have the same word today in the 21st century.
Interesting.
Yeah? But this is an old English word for that was later replaced by citizens. Okay?
Okay.
So it's the inhabitants, it's the citizens. The burghers had scarce tasted of freedom. The throne, weak at home, was despised abroad. Philip, although he plotted industriously to annex France and subjugate England, appears to have deemed Scotland unworthy of his thoughts. What appreciable addition could so poor a country have brought to the lordly empire of Spain? Philip, it is true, was all covetous, although rich in kingdoms. Still, he scarce coveted his kingdom. But who at that hour would have had the boldness to predict that the Scottish fir tree, rooted in this infertile soil and buffeted by these unkindly blasts, would one day overtop the great Spanish cedar? Quote, how can this thing be? Unquote, it would have been asked had such an augury been dropped. Among the sons of that land there arose one who, although he wore no crown, yet carried in his breast a kingly soul, and by that soul ruled his nation. Like Philip, too, this man governed for an idea. But Knox's idea was not Philip's idea. Talking about John Knox, if you didn't know that yet. Knox's idea was the direct converse of Philip's idea. God alone, said Knox, is Lord of the conscience. What did Philip say? The church alone is the Lord of the conscience. Right?
Right.
This idea was with Knox the sum of all liberty. It was a little seed, and it was deposited in a little country, but Knox knew it to be a seed of life. Out of it would come, first, a free gospel, next, a free constitution, and to these 2 indispensable things would be added all that is needful to a nation: order, industry, commerce, science, art, political power, and, in due time, greatness. The little Scotland, with this idea, he would back against the great Spain with all her armies and fleets, her wealthy dependencies, and her subtle statecraft. So far as the bigotry and factions of the age permitted, Knox made his country an embodiment of this idea. Upon it did he frame its organization. Upon it did he stake its existence as an independent state. And, having done so, Knox died. And, amid signs of sorrow, unostentatious but deep, was laid in the grave. 300 years pass over Europe. It is the middle of the 19th century. The papal world is rocking to and fro by the successive shocks of a great revolution. By the way, interesting choice of words. The papal world is rocking to and fro, because in the Bible we read that Satan is walking in the earth to and fro, seeking whom he can devour, right?
Right. Very interesting.
Now Philip feels it in the vaults of the Escurial and quits his tomb. Knox too rises from his grave, now for the proof of the 2 ideas. Clearing his eyes from the dust of the sepulchre, Philip looks around on the dominions he once governed. He surveys once more the scene of his former grandeur. What is this which he sees? Is this his once magnificent Spain? Or does he just dream? Is it a reality? Or is it some hideous phantom of the grave that mocks his sight? He would see that mighty empire on whose vast dominion the sun never set. Surely this cannot be it, shriveled up into the naked, barren, and depopulated provinces lying betwixt the Pyrenees and the sea. He would see his princely cities. Once he counted them by hundreds. They were the abodes of industry and skill, the emporiums of riches and the homes of elegance. Where and what are they now? Blots on the soil, which they once adorned. Decay and ruin have stricken them. Reeking with filth, steaming with poisonous stenches, they are the haunts of vice, the nests of idleness, and the lairs of beggary. He would see the unrivaled cultivation that covered those plains on which the trees and shrubs of Europe were mingled with the aromatic flowers of the East. Those olive groves, those citron and orange gardens, from which queenly cities looked forth, and where villages clustered by hundreds, walled around from the breath of tempest by their grand sierras. Sierra is a desert. Instead of this proud spectacle, so instead of all these blooming fields, you have grand sierras, great deserts, okay? Instead of this proud spectacle, there meets his astonished eye dreary wastes where no rivulet flows, where no flower blooms, where no tree gives its shadow, and where the heart is uncheered by the sight of man or of man's dwelling. The desert extends over a full half of this once richly cultivated soil. In this unhappy land, industry has lost its skill, art has forgot its cunning, and science has extinguished her lamp. To this shore there comes not now the richly freighted galleon. The harbors of Spain are choked up. Into her marts are poured no longer the corn of Lombardy, the rich fabrics of the Netherlands, the gold and silver of Peru, the haughty hidalgos, the haughty hidalgos and conquerors of the 16th century have sunk into brigands, beggars, and monks. Philip's descendants are contempted for their vices and pitied for their weakness. His throne is a byword among the nations by whom it was once obeyed. Historians are searching his archives, reading his letters, and bringing forth from a darkness which the Spanish king had hoped would be eternal, the record of the intrigues, the hypocrisies, and the crimes by which he sought to prop up his power. Philip beholds all this, and there gathers on his dreary visage a deeper blackness than on the day when he was told of the destruction of his invincible armada. Surely, he exclaims, the judgment has set. Surely the books have been opened. This is the great day of the wrath of the Lamb. Let me flee to the walls of the Escurial. Let me hide myself forever in the tomb. Just a second, I have to take a sip of coffee here.
Please do.
Now, Philip had staked his empire upon the truth of his theorem. That theorem, as we have said, was the entire and unqualified submission to the conscience of every man upon the earth to the authority of the Church, the Roman Catholic Church. The Church was to think for all. The Church was to believe for all. And whoever should maintain as false what she defined to be true was to be burned alive in this world and consigned to eternal damnation in the next. This was Philip's maxim of government. If true, this maxim would raise Spain to a yet dizzier height of wealth and power. If false, it could not fail to smite the very roots of its prosperity and glory. From that hour that Spain adopted this dogma, her course was downwards, and ever downwards. Her destruction came like an armed man. Conscience was oppressed, virtue departed, genius, skill, industry, wealth, military glory, political sway, all forsook her. Nothing could arrest her decline. Philip's maxim hung like a millstone around her neck. And she, who in the 16th century had stood at the head of Europe, queen of 100 dependencies and mistress of a third of the globe, has in the 19th become the basest of the European kingdoms. Her experiment of 3 centuries has ended in a reductio ad absurdum, means reduced to absurdism. In the ruin of Spain, we read the falsehood of Philip's maxim. But what of the counterpart idea? What had become of Scotland, that is, I guess. You know, I think it's very interesting how James Atkin Wylie describes the going down of Spain. When you look today in the European Union, something that you are not there very well
accustomed to,
in the United States, right. Familiar with, taught on in the United States of America.
Very unfamiliar.
Is that the European Union consists of, I don't know, something 28 countries or so, like this. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these countries have very big troubles economically, most and for all. Oh, sure. And of course, with their infrastructure and all that stuff. And the most country in danger of that is, of course, Greece. You all heard about the Greece or the Greek quote-unquote bankruptcy some years ago, or the luring bankruptcy of Greek and the probable leaving of Greek out of the European Union.
Oh, that's right.
In that time. Yeah. But next to Greek, do you want to know which countries also are on the same line, on the same stake, on the same line of losing all credibility and actually having to leave the European Union, if possible, quote unquote? Mm-hmm. Well, it's Cyprus, it's Italy, it's Spain, it's Portugal, it's Ireland, Roman Catholic Ireland, yeah?
Right.
England stepped on the brake with the Brexit. That is still not yet done. They are still negotiating on that today in 2018. But all of these southern countries, all of these always Roman Catholic countries are in the same position as James Atkin Wylie describes it here about Spain. Still today in 2018, you know?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
The demise of the Roman Catholic countries, you know? First they grow hard, the curve is going steep up, but then comes a turning point, and the curve is going steep down. And that is what we are in today. And that's why we are going to have a quote-unquote new world order today.
Right.
Because they will declare the system of nations has failed. Now, when the system of nations has failed, what is over? A one world nation, a global community. Yeah. Where we have a one world religion and a one world government and a one world military and a one world everything.
You know, this is really reminding me of something I gotta say. Please. It's reminding me of the ending of our president here in the United States here, Donald Trump, when he spoke at the Al Smith dinner in 2016, the very ending of his speech. He was speaking about we got to all come together as one nation, as a world community.
World community, yeah.
Yeah, remember?
Yeah. That's a good that you remember that, Bret.
I'll never forget it. And you know, that's the thing. These Trump supporters don't want to hear it. You know, but you know, by voting for this system, you're giving it complacency. Oh, yes, you have the right to rule us poor serfs.
Well, you know, Bret, this is interesting that you bring that up. You know that I'm always against politics.
Yeah, I know that.
And some people on my channel sometimes even ask the question, where does the Bible say that politics is evil? Where does the Bible say that we should not engage in politics? I didn't have an answer to that.
Yeah.
But then, a few days ago, it came to me, the Holy Ghost spoke to me. And he said, just read Revelation chapter 17, verse 2.
Oh. And what is that? Remind me.
Now, what does Revelation chapter 17, verse 1 and 2 say? And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but when I engage into politics, I serve the king who is fornicating with the whore of Revelation.
Absolutely right. That's exactly how I see it too, brother.
And if that is not the point to not engage in politics here in this world, then I don't know whatever will be a point of that.
That's right.
You know? You cannot serve
right.
2 masters.
No, you cannot. No. But you know, it's one of those things, you know, it's really hard for people to come to this realization on their own. I think it's really humbling, isn't it?
It is. I always knew from my gut that I was right when I told the people to get out of politics, but I didn't know where to find that in the Bible. I mean, I just didn't see the connection. And then all of a sudden it said, well, Jörg, it's right there. Revelation 17, verse 2.
Yeah, that's right.
When the kings of this world commit fornication with the whore of Babylon, and you serve the king, means that you are serving in politics, then you are part of that system, and then you are with the whore and not with the Lamb of God.
Yep.
It's easy, you know, but that's what the Bible is. The Bible is so simple. The Bible is so easy that we often tend to look over it, look over the right answer. Well, because we always look for it in complicated ways, and the Bible speaks to us in easy ways, right?
It does. It does. Take my yoke upon you. It's easy. You know, the Lord said his yoke is easy. It's not hard.
Right.
It's just that we need to flood ourselves with Bible learning. That's the point. We need to flood ourselves with Bible quotes and memorization, whatever it takes, you know, because the Lord wants you to read the Bible. He wants you to engage in that kind of thought, because that's the real thought. That is, like we were talking about earlier, right? This subject of this chapter. It's the conscience.
I have, even though I read this book now some years ago, Rulers of Evil, I never understood fully when Papacy actually made his point when he said that the Jesuits introduced us to learning against learning, and what that really means. I mean, what that means in its fullness.
You're right.
In its fullness. It means they introduce a learning in this world that we are to adhere from cradle to grave, that takes us away from the Bible. Whatever we study in this world, in the school, in the universities, in our spare time, via television, via newsletters, via news on television, whatever we study in this world, it's all vain deceit. It is all ratio studiorum. It is all just there to take us away from the Bible, instead of studying the Bible and the Bible alone every day, 24/7, 365. The Jesuits say, no. The Gnostic learning against learning, the Medici learning method is the one that you should follow. Don't look at the Bible. The Bible is unimportant. The Bible has nothing to say. It's a book that you cannot even understand without being taught by a priest what it means. The full content of the understanding of what Papacy said in this book, Rulers of Evil, about this learning to learn, learning against learning. I think it is in chapter 4 of the book, Medici Learning, where he speaks about that. That is something we should pick up again. I probably should pick up again and read that chapter again.
Oh, absolutely.
With the understanding that I have now, and try to share with the viewers what he actually is trying to sell us there. That he says every, absolutely, there is not one exception. Every learning institution of this world that adheres to the Jesuit Ratio Studiorum leads you away from the knowledge of the Word of God. And that's just it. That's what they wanted to achieve a few hundred years ago, and that's what they achieved fully today.
Oh, by golly, they got it. They got it by these, monetary systems and all this. It all serves the same purpose. It's incredible.
Yeah, all these little wheels, they go together,
They do. Yeah, that's right.
One fits into the other almost perfectly, and you cannot get out of that system of smeared wheels. That is like a how do you say that? Like a gearbox in your car.
Yes.
When one wheel doesn't fit perfectly into the next wheel, then you have trouble changing gears and you have trouble moving forward. And they smeared the gearbox of this world so perfectly. They have control of every little tooth wheel. Or how do you call these wheels?
Yeah, that's right.
Tooth wheels? Yeah.
Well, you can call them that, or you could just call them gears, or the teeth on the wheels. Sure.
Yeah.
I don't know any other way to say it.
We say tooth wheels in German.
Interesting.
Zahnrad from Zahn, from like the tooth we have in our mouth.
That's right.
The one tooth going into gripping into the next one. That's the expression that we use. So that's why I say tooth wheels. I don't know, of course, if that's the English expression. Where I can look that up in translator. I mean, we are floating in this video anyway now. So let's just look that up and say what Google Translate has to say to that. That I'm not going to use a expression that that most people don't even understand here. So
yeah, let's see how good Google is.
Gear, cogwheel, gear wheel, cog.
Yeah, cogwheel. That's a good one. Yeah,
cogwheel. Okay, that's the expression that you.
You
see my video uploaded. Did you see the message?
Yeah, sweet.
16:30. Yeah, the planned upload worked. So the Jesuits smear the gears of this world by using the cogwheels, and they are controlling every little cogwheel that it nicely fits into the next one. And that's why the system is running like this, wonderfully.
Like clockwork. That's right. It's
like
running
clockwork.
Like clockwork.
Yeah, exactly. This clockwork, Bret, that's another point. Of course, you remember the grandfather clock, right?
Oh, yeah. Sure do.
Tom Fress spoke about that in this wonderful video some years ago that I have on, I think, all my channels, the grandfather clock. Now I'm just looking for the picture here. The computer has to wake up. He doesn't know that it's already in the late afternoon.
Yeah.
You have this grandfather clock, and we always say, the Jesuits use the people with this pendulum from left to right and right to left and left to right and right to left. And the only thing that changes is the finger on the clock here. We are turned from left to right, from Democrats to Republicans, from Republicans back to Democrats, from fascists to communists, from communists to fascists, And we don't see that only this finger here on the top of the clock changes the agenda of the Antichrist. And how do they do that? Well, whenever this pendulum swings to one side or another, it gives power to one of the little cogwheels. And this one cogwheel fits into the next cogwheel until the power that is taken by the pendulum is transported over to the finger here on the clock. And that's the point. Therefore, they need the cogwheels. And the cogwheels is the Ratio Studiorum. I think that's a nice way to explain this, right, Bret?
Sure is. Yep, that's right.
Anyway,
let's not get too far away from the book reading we were doing today, but I think that was just something that we needed to talk about during this reading here. And, when the epiphany comes, when the idea all of a sudden comes, the idea needs to be explained, right?
Oh, and it's a big one, too, because the learning against learning is very, very significant. And we've been so incredibly trained to just, not really trained, but rather influenced. Mm-hmm. We've been influenced so far away from the Bible that people just don't consider it as much as we should, really.
We've been indoctrinated.
Yes, we have.
Yeah, just in the week I was watching a video about the American education system. And that was a person who commented on my second YouTube channel years ago and put in a video there, and he speaks the video is spoken in English with English subtitles, because in between the speaking there come explaining sentences and quotes, and these are in Polish. And therefore, the whole video is translated into English. And I thought that was very interesting to watch. Maybe I can send you the video later on if you want to. And I just asked him in a comment, did you ever hear of Charlotte Iserbyt, the deliberate dumbing down of America? Mm-hmm. And he didn't know that. And I said, well, okay, I never read the book in completion. I saw interviews with Charlotte Iserbyt on the television and on YouTube, yeah. And I have the book here on my computer. You can get it for free on the internet. The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. And when you combine that with what we were just saying here about the Jesuits and Ratio Studiorum, there you got your culprit,
Yeah, that's right.
There you got your culprit. Anyway, I want to continue in the book, and James Edgar Wylie just painted a wonderful picture for us to understand here about what happened to Spain, and as I told you, what actually happened to all these southern nations in Europe today. If you take Greece, you take Italy, you take Spain, you take Portugal, they are all southern lands. One country that is right in the middle between southern and northern is France, and that's also very much in danger in that regard. And those are the countries that will eventually bring the New World Order into existence, over here at least. They will bring an end to the nation system as we know it today. So James Edgar Wylie just described how Spain lost all its flower, all its grace, all its glory from hundreds of years ago, and how Spain's example was led into reductio ad absurdum. In the ruin of Spain, we read the falsehood of Philip's maxim. What was Philip's maxim? The church is the lord of the conscience. That is Philip's maxim. That's the church's maxim, and that's what led Spain into oblivion, into perdition, into bankruptcy, into what James Edgar Wylie writes about this right here. Now, but what of the counterpart idea that was so ugly to begin with? He who had gone down to the grave, never having feared the face of man, returns from it equally courageous. Knox looks around to see how it fares with the little country which he had made the champions of a great principle. Now, sorry, I just have to take here a picture. I want to put a picture of Knox in here so that we all know who we are speaking about. This is a wonderful picture of John Knox, and this is the guy that we are talking about right now, so we at least can put a picture on what we are speaking here about, right? He lived between 1514 and 1572. Okay, now I'm going to continue. Knox looks around to see how it fares with the little country he had made the champion of a great principle. Can this be the land in the dust of which 300 years ago he lay down to rest? It must be. It can be none other. Here it is, its place on the map of the globe unchanged and lying betwixt the old parallels of latitude and longitude. But in every other respect, how different. While Knox has been sleeping, with what a wondrous vitality and force has his principle been operating! It has come upon Scotland like the unseen yet resistless powers of spring, driving before it the rigidity and darkness of winter, and cleansing, renewing, and beautifying the whole face of the land and the whole face of society. It has rent from the soul the shackles of ignorance and superstition, and from the body the fetters of feudalism. It has purified the land from friars, images, saints' days, and massacres. Cowls, cords, beads, and crosses, with their inseparable attendants, idleness, degradation, and filth, have all disappeared. And in their room have come an open Bible, that fount of liberty, the Sabbath, that day of blessed rest and holy thought, and a Christian worship with its sanctuary scattered sweetly over hills and valley and city, and sending up the melody of psalms and the voice of the prayer in the Sabbath stillness to the great Jehovah. Beginning here, the silent but mighty principle has penetrated downwards into every department of the nation's life and the nation's action, vivifying and transforming it. Amid the storms of the North Sea, it has created an isle of beauty. At the extremities of Europe, it has opened a fountain of civilization. Where the deep darkness of an ancient barbarism brooded, the lamp of science and of letters now burns. The brown moor has given place to fields of golden grain. The morass has been converted into rich pasture lands. The dark forest has fallen before the axe, and cultivated fields of thriving towns now occupy its place. It has given to Scotland a husbandry which Lombardy might do well to imitate, and has spread out beneath its northern sky landscapes which Spain and Italy might envy. On the Scottish soil, art has erected the fairest of earthly cities, and from the Scottish genius has proceeded that one mechanical invention which, more than all others, is destined to give man the dominion of the earth on which he dwells, and is rapidly revolutionizing the whole labor of the globe. As one with England, Scotland enjoys a home industry and a foreign commerce which far transcends that of Spain in her palmy days. And she stands at the head of an empire which, whether we regard area or territory, population or resources, is double that of Spain in the zenith of her power, as Spain was double that of the Roman Empire. Thus has Knox's principle been tested. Nothing could be more complete as a demonstration of its truth than the Britain of the 19th century. Its triumph is indeed magnificent. Understood aright, the present state of Europe is one of the grandest sermons ever preached to the world. There is no lesson like it, no lesson so emphatic, and so full of high and solemn meaning to be read anywhere out of the Bible. It is, in fact, a re-exhibition of the Bible. It is a new revelation to the nations of those same doctrines regarding the divine government which were given in early ages by the pens of inspired men. In 2 points only does this new writing differ from the old, and these are points no ways material. They regard the form, not the subject matter of the revelation. The first writing was given in words, the second was given in facts. The first writing contained much in a small space. A few moments of time sufficed for the enunciation of some immutable principle of the government of the all-powerful, and a single brief sentence fixed it forever on the inspired page. Not so in the other writing. There has been no such economizing of times and space. 1,000 years have been required to enunciate what in the Bible is given in a single line. A whole continent has not been too large, and a whole millennium has not been too long for the revelation of great fundamental principles touching the government of the eternal. There are, in truth, 2 Bibles before the world. Both proceed from the same author, and the same finger has written both. The infidel snarls and denies the one, unaware all the while of the existence of the other, which repeats, not with pen and ink, but with sounds that fill the world, in the rise and prosperity, the decline and fall of nations, the very same truths that are written in the other. The great ruler inflicts his vengeance now, not by physical terrors, but by permitting evil systems to ripen and shed their venom on their supporters. No doubt, it makes many ages. In the case of the papal nations, it has taken 12 centuries to complete this course and bring around the judgment day. But that day comes round at last, and then it is seen to be a public execution following upon a patient and judicial trial. The punishment is seen not as the result of accident, but as the operation of law, of those great righteous and immutable laws by which the Supreme governs the world. Such, in brief, is the nature of that dispensation under which, as we take it, the continental nations have now passed, and such are the principles upon which the events that have of late befallen them are to be explained and vindicated. In this way, too, does God authenticate his word. If you ask, where is the proof that the Bible is the word of God? We answer, well, look back in history. Look around you on the world. You say, let an angel descend from heaven, let a prophet come up from the tomb, and we will believe. But why ask any authentication from the other world? A greater than Moses or than any prophet from the dead is present in this, stands before us. He who gave the Bible at first is giving it over again, not in letter, but he is giving us the Bible in fact. We ask proof of the first revelation when we ourselves are witness of the second. Why seek a confirmation of the words when the facts are undeniable before us? And the very slowness of the process, the very length of the time required for the evolution of some great principle makes the demonstration the more perfect and the proof the more irresistible. Were it a single act, it might be held to be a coincidence. But when it is a series of acts ranging over long centuries and embodying the very principles of the Bible, there is absolutely no room for doubting the character of the manifestation. This is God. This is the God of the Bible. And though every grave on earth were to open and their dead to arise, their testimony would by no means be so satisfactory and irrefragable as the testimony which God is bearing to himself and to his word in these dispensations. If we believe not him, neither would we believe were the dead to arise. This leaves us with chapter 5 that we will probably do in the reading tomorrow, the figurations of the world's day and the church's night. Because I found this a very profound and interesting chapter to read, Bret, and I think that is a good point to take a break and start anew, even though we haven't read for a whole hour, but I don't care for that whole hour. This was too nice to just start for a few sentences, a new chapter, and I want to relay that to tomorrow. But of course, I want to give you the last words on today's broadcast for the moment. I will, of course, do another closing as always, but please, your views on what we've just read, Bret.
I was just really stunned by that too. That's a fantastic chapter we just read. And you had mentioned earlier that, going over chapter 4, Medici learning in the book Rulers of Evil would match up really well with this. And I have to agree. We could always do a discussion on that too before we proceed if you wanted to. I think that would fit just fine. But that's just an afterthought. If we just proceed in the momentum we've kept, I think that people can look up the reading from Medici Learning Chapter 4, the reading you already did, and get a lot out of it. So I really appreciate it, Jörg. This is really profound knowledge, and most of it is European history. And this is the very subjects that have been, swept under the rug and hidden from us in in every institution. So I think it's very important to continue in this. So looking real forward to tomorrow then, Jörg.
Well, you just made an interesting point by this rulers of evil. And, this PDF is just right here. I'm going to open that up right now here.
You may as well, yeah. If you're open to it.
The point that I want to make is when we look at the index of the book, Rulers of Evil, we see chapter 4, Medici learning. Okay? We were just reading chapter 4 in James Atkin Wylie's The Great Exodus, chapter 4.
Yeah, that's right.
Don't tell me that as a coincidence.
That's right.
I think this is probably even the divine finger pointing us to it from, Jörg, correct what you did in the reading of Rulers of Evil at that time and read Rulers of Evil chapter 4 again in the light that you understand it today, a few years after I read it for the first time.
Yes.
And in the same light that you now read chapter 4 of The Great Exodus of James Atkin Wylie. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying that we have to do that directly tomorrow. We can also continue in the book. But one of these days, we will surely sit down and do a new analysis of chapter 4 of the book Rules of Evil, Medici Learning, in the light of the understanding that we have today in 2018, because I read Rulers of Evil, I think, some 3 years ago.
Hey, we could even do it in 2019, too. It's not that far away.
Yeah, because then it's 4 years after the first one, right?
Right.
Chapter 4, 4 years later.
We still have things to learn, brother, I'm sure,
Yeah. And the number 4, of course, is a very important number in the Bible. The number 4, Jesus was tempted 40 days in the desert.
Yes.
The Israelites wandered 40 years through the desert. There are many things with the Israelites were 400 years captive in Egypt, and so on and so on. I think when you look up the number 440 or 400, you will find many events in the Bible that are of very big importance. And maybe it's right. Maybe we should just wait until 2019 starts and do that 4 years after the initial reading of Rules of Evil, and can then go back to chapter 4 of James Atkin Wylie's The Great Exodus and chapter 4 of Rules of Evil by F. Papacy.
I think we could do it anytime. It doesn't really matter. It's just the thought, that we've got. Well, I don't know how much time we have. Online with the economies working the way they're working. We know that in 2008 we had a significant crash, and it's been a while, and or was it really 2007 it started?
2007, 2008, but we never recovered from that crash anyway. So
no, we didn't, but we're in this false system with so much falsehood. I guess it could crash any time, realistically. I mean, all it takes is one major event and triggers, these landslides. And we know how precarious this financial system is now.
This system keeps us in perpetual danger and economic crisis because it controls the danger and the crisis, Bret. I think that's
right.
The point.
Exactly.
Yeah, to bring this down.
Yep.
Okay, so today that was the 20th of October, and we are going back together tomorrow on the 21st on a Sunday afternoon at 4 o'clock my time, 9 o'clock your time, when you have had your coffee and have woken up, I hope.
Yeah.
And join me in the reading tomorrow, and then we will start chapter 5, and maybe we will also have Brother Michael with us on, who is probably joining us tomorrow. He told me that the possibility was about, I think, 70 to 80% that he could join us tomorrow. Then he will do that. And for the rest, I would say thank you, Bret, for doing the reading with me today. Thank you for your input. And
thank you for inviting me in.
And I enjoyed very much the reading today. And sometimes I just say, how is that possible that I haven't even read it? And then I read it so well. I mean, today it was much better than the readings before. And I hope the Holy Spirit will lead me into all truths and will lead me into a good reading like I did today for tomorrow too, so that for you it is enjoyable to listen to this and to learn from this and to study from this. But above all, the learning and study of the book of James Atkin Wylie or the books of Henry Grattan Guinness or Charles Haddon Spurgeon or whosoever, don't ever forget to read the book of your Creator. the Holy Bible, the 1611 King James Bible, the only true preserved word in the English language today in the 21st century. The Bible always comes first. Study your Bible, learn your Bible, and then learn the history that the Bible exposes to you in the form of prophecy long before history fulfilled it. Now, in 2018, look back and study the Bible. Get out of the ratio studiorum learning system of learning against learning, of the Medici learning of the Jesuits they introduced in the 16th century, but return to the true Word of God. Maranatha.
We were on the way back from London on the jet plane, and there was a man dressed in a uniform like the Catholic priests wear, and he was conducting himself not like a priest you'd see in a movie, very friendly. He was a very sophisticated type man, and people could sense that. And I never thought I'd see him again, but in Baltimore at the airline station where the baggages come off, well, I turned around and there he was next to me. And I just turned to him and said, "Hello, friend, are you a Jesuit?" And he says, "Yes," with a big smile. You see all of his teeth. And he was very happy with himself. I said, "Well, listen, I'm very interested in the Jesuits. I've read some about them. And what would you think about the Council of Trent and what was invented in the Council of Trent and the infiltration of the Jesuits into Protestantism and the use of the Jesuits through organizations like the Illuminati and the futurism theory, the secret rapture that they invented for the Protestants?" And I talked to him about a lot of those things, and he had a metamorphosis take place. His face became rigid, his smile went away, and he looked me right in the eyes and he said, "You know quite a bit, don't you?" Like he never expected it. And I told him that I was one of the Protestants that got away, and if he could realize that if somebody like me knew those things, just imagine some of the other of God's people that know those things and are willing to tell anybody about them. And it was an amazing situation how that man's face changed, and he thought he was like in one identity, but all of a sudden he realized that these dark secrets of theirs, they're being found out, and I'll never forget that. Would you consider that Jesuitism to be an occult secret society?
It is an occult secret society from the point of view that the Jesuit order, what you know of the Jesuit order and what everybody knows of the Jesuit order is not the truly Jesuit order. What that means is even the Jesuits within the Jesuit order, they all are not knowing the secret society, the inner secret society that they are surrounded by.
I would like to think that the reason for this is that I too am a son of this great continent from which we have all received so much and toward which we share a common responsibility. Each son or daughter of a given country has a mission, a personal and social responsibility. Your own responsibility as members of Congress is to enable this country by your legislative activity to grow as a nation. You are the face of its people. They are representatives. You are called to defend and preserve the dignity of your fellow citizens in the tireless and demanding pursuit of the common good. For this is the chief aim of all politics.